Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at the top story we are tracking for you. There is a common saying that a war knows no boundaries. Nothing is too far-fetched when the aim is to defeat the enemy. The strangest of crimes happen. Something similar is happening in Ukraine, the country at war with its invader, Russia. Ukraine has accused Russia of stealing grain from the territory it has occupied. The country's deputy agriculture minister made the statement on Ukraine's national TV. Now, Taras Vaistovsky has expressed concern that most of what he said was 1.5 million tons of grain stored in occupied territory could also be stolen by Russian forces. Ukraine Agriculture Minister made a similar accusation earlier this week. Now, Mykola Solsky has said that grain theft had increased in the last 2 weeks. I quote, "I personally hear this from many silo owners in the occupied territory. This is outright robbery, and this is happening everywhere in occupied territory," unquote. Solsky said that an act such as this can create food problems for the regions not under control. Now, on Thursday, Ukraine's foreign ministry also accused Russia of stealing grain in Kherson and said that the act increased the threat to global food security. Russia has denied the claims. The Kremlin said that it has no clue from where such information is coming from. Ukraine it is being called the breadbasket of Europe. It is the world's fifth biggest exporter of wheat. And now, because of a raging war, the country's grain export has been impacted. In 2021, Kiev had a harvest of 86 million tons of grain. Analysts say that there will be an output of 41.4 million tons this year. But the Agriculture Ministry itself has given no harvest forecast. Although on Friday, the ministry has said that 6 regions in Ukraine had completed their early spring grain sowing, despite the Russian invasion. Meanwhile, the farmers in Ukraine continuing to maintain the undying spirit in the southern region of Zaporizhia, which borders the front line of the military conflict with Russia. Farmers are now wearing body armor to plow their fields. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Maximilian Hess, who is a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute from London. Thank you for being with us on this broadcast. Now, how do you react to Kiev's accusation that Russian troops are, quote unquote, stealing grains from the area which it has occupied? Now, Maximilian, I'm not sure if you heard my question. I will repeat it. How do you react to Kiev's accusation that Russian troops are stealing grains from the areas that it has occupied? Our guest, Maximilian Hess, joining us live on this broadcast. He is a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute from London. Thank you for being with us. Now, Maximilian, how do you react to Kiev's accusation that Russian troops are stealing grains from the areas that it has occupied in Ukraine?
There does appear to be some social media evidence that this activity appears to be occurring. And we do know that from the previous conflict, when Russia first invaded eastern Ukraine in 2014, that Russia took control of a lot of strategic assets there. So I do think it's a claim that has to be taken credible and sadly occurs very often during conflicts.
Right. And the West is vowing to send heavier weapons to assist Kiev. Russia claims to have again targeted and destroyed a weapons depot where munitions were given by the US were being kept. How do you see things moving on from here?
Well, it's not just Washington that's already begun providing a large amount of defensive aid and military indirect support. but also a number of European countries, in particular Poland and a lot of other countries that neighbor Ukraine in the east. And the debate is very heated in Germany. And although they've just announced some heavy weaponry there, it's unlikely to be nearly as much as even Poland has given thus far. I do think that we're likely to continue to see Russian attacks on Ukrainian strategic infrastructure across the country. They've shown a willingness to attack all the way up to the Polish border. That being said, I don't think they're looking to directly strike Western supplies, which will come in at the border, because Russia's not looking to escalate there.
Right. And on that, Moscow continues to warn the West against arming Ukraine in quite strong terms. Do you think this can escalate?
I mean, certainly there are always risks that it can escalate, but we just have to see the news that just broke on Friday, where Russia still paid over $600 million to Western creditors in a move that surprised a lot of people. I think that Russia is still hoping there's some kind of economic future for them after this war, because the Kremlin still seems to think that it can win and wrap this up rather cleanly. That, however, to me appears increasingly unlikely.
Right, and Maximilian, 9 weeks in, the longer the war continues, it is, of course, the Ukrainians who are continuing to suffer the most. In your opinion, how and when will this war end?
It's a very, very difficult question to say right now, because it really depends on Putin, the invading force, fighting under him. He seems to be willing to not only go for all of the Donbass, but also other major Ukrainian cities such as Kiev, which remains under siege, Ukraine's second largest city. And of course, he began the war with a far larger assault than I think had broadly been expected, targeting Kiev directly as well. That being said, the costs that the Russian military is bearing are larger than those that are being borne by the Ukrainian forces. So far, it appears to indicate they do seem likely to be able to continue to make advances, but those major kinds of breakthroughs will probably require further mobilization within Russia, further costs, invoke further sanctions, and he knows that that risks regime stability. However, so far, I don't see any indication that Putin is planning to climb down.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your valuable insights and joining us on this broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.